Hey everyone, welcome back to Redditly. Today's video is titled My Story. Please make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a future upload from us. Let's get right into it. I've been on this sub for a while and I feel like I need to tell you my story. I'm male 36 with female 33 wife. We are both religiously very conservative, no intercourse before marriage or outside with serious social consequences if you do, and from large families that are the same religion, and we met about 13 years ago and seriously started dating about 11 years ago. We married 9.5 years ago. When we were dating, my wife listed all her previous BF had abused her in some manner, physical/mental, and one who went to see. She also, and this is an insane red flag, is my fault, had boasted about how she got back at her older sister by stealing her boyfriend a while before we met. She talked about it quite a few times, boasting every time the two had a fight. During our courtship, she was very quick to send me naughty pictures as well, engaging as much as possible early within the limits of our religious beliefs. When we first got married, I found the adjustment very difficult, as my wife was very clingy, and I wasn't to the point where I was not as engaged in the marriage as she was, and this has been brought up for our entire marriage by her to shame me. We had planned to not have children straight away, as we were living next to London and couldn't afford children, and while I had a great job, it was a graduate job, so paid badly for that region of the world. My wife couldn't work, and so I had to find her work with my sister as a nanny, which she had done before. 2 months in, we got pregnant. We used a mixture of the calendar and condoms, and I made sure to keep that, but it happened anyways. This started a spiral in us. My wife refused to work the second she got pregnant, which meant I needed to work harder. Over the next 18 months, we got thousands of debt, and the consequence is she moved to Scotland with her mom and dad, while I commuted up and down at the weekend on a bus. It was an 8-hour journey, and I am very tall, so it was uncomfortable. When I was down near London through the week, I was skint and often slept through or on my office, using the showers at work, and even camped, but the site was a 2-hour walk away, so that was difficult. I was also often working to support a site in the US, so I had an 8-hour day in the UK and another 6 to 8 hour shift working with the guys over there. It was a hard year, but after a year I found, at this point in an infrequent argument with my wife, that she had purposefully lied about her calendar when we first got married to force us to have a baby. This caused some resentment, as you can imagine. She also had our car, and we have never had a car do more miles in a year than that year. She would also play games with intercourse, withholding and using it as leverage when we only saw each other for one night, as I arrived on Saturday morning and left Sunday afternoon. I found work in Scotland and moved from a company where I was in the 104,000 that passed selection to the 9 out of 10 that could probably write in the area. Years passed and eventually I became reasonably wealthy. We owned a smallish house at that point and 2 cars, and we were doing okay. I did, however, to work away a lot, as this part of Scotland is an industrial wasteland, and she would refuse to move away to find better work. Our marriage changed and I became a better father and husband as I grew up. I started to really rely on her, and I thought the same. There was issues, sure, but I thought we were in a reasonable place. So a year ago, the church I go to merged with another church. There was a married guy in the church who went very often with his kids, but not his wife, who has disowned the church because 5 years earlier, her husband had been visiting a work friend in the early hours who was female, and she had suspected and been tracking him. The church, who normally acts on these kinds of matters, didn't do anything, so she stopped going. Well, fast forward 3 months and my wife finds a house she likes in our village. It's very expensive for me, about $500K, and she goes full speed to try and buy it. I say I'm not buying it because the mortgage, to actually own it, I would need to work 3 hours away all week for a couple of years, and then overpay the mortgage and remortgage to something I could afford. She still refuses to work. I loved her and wanted to be with my 3 children and her. She offered me anything in bed, which I didn't take. But eventually, she wore me down with complaints and the such. We went for it. So I moved to the other town through the week, and 4 months of annoying bureaucracy, we bought the house. 2 weird things happened. First, when I spoke to the estate agent, she said, "I thought you were from another region of the UK." And on the second viewing, the person said, "I heard you were in the entertainment industry." This didn't twig at the time. Roll on to the move-in day, and this guy messages me and asks if I need a hand in moving. He has inserted himself into my wife's family pretty hard and is a lot more easy talking, but one of those guys who is just full of BS, a cool story type of guy who always has the best stories. He is also from that other region and works in entertainment, albeit in a junior role. I said yes, and I was happy to roll with it. So he turns up when all the work was done, filing the van, and is all over my wife, and she's all over him. I am busy getting stuff done, but notice it. She then gets into his car for the exciting bit driving to the new house, and I shout to her and she waves me off and gets in, then we all drive down. She then, when she gets into the new house, shows him around the house. They are both super excited, and then he leaves, leaving me and her dad and my friend to unload the van. So we have intercourse that night, but it was just still sitting in my head. The next day, I was going to IKEA, building stuff you can imagine, and in the evening I say to her, "Want to come down and spend some time together?" She says no, but I could see that smile on her face, the happy one I had seen with her the day before. And as I walked down the stairs, something in my head clicked. I ran upstairs and asked her about him, but she denied anything. And I said if she's cheating, I want a divorce, and I grabbed her phone. She then went totally nuts. I mean crazy, and attacked me, and I am a lot taller than her and stockier, but it was getting to the point where I was going to have to hurt her to keep the phone, and I let go. She ran into the ensuite, and I followed and tried to grab the phone around the door, which had my foot in to stop closing. She ripped the lock off the door and fell back, and the door hit her leg, I think, as my foot was still in it and the small force applied. She started crying and I backed off. For reference, she has physically attacked me a number of times in our marriage, but I am a lot bigger than her and she doesn't know how to punch. I am a big guy that boxes at the gym, and one punch would leave a big mark or worse on her. She then locks the door and comes out 5 minutes later looking a lot calmer. We talk about it and I am feeling really guilty because there was no definite proof. She then says she wanted to show me her phone now, and I say there is no point as she would have deleted stuff. She says her WhatsApp is set to auto-delete and we leave it. I go away to work on Monday morning and she stays at home. Monday night, I am out for a run and getting to think I can't remember seeing auto-delete as a feature on WhatsApp. So I look and that isn't a feature on WhatsApp, so I text her and ask her. She admits that the feature doesn't exist and goes silent. I'm mad and text her telling her she needs to change and stuff if she wants to save the marriage. The next morning, she tells me she wants a divorce on the phone and I am to pay for everything, stay 3 hours away while she stays in a brand new house I just bought for our family. After she spoke to her mom, and I called her dad and told him what I thought was happening, and he sounded like it could be possible. That night she spoke to her parents, and they suggested counseling and a year to see what happens. We spoke on the phone in the evening with me begging and crying, but she was total ice queen. It was just no. She was also angry at what I had told her dad. I then phoned my parents, who I had been distant for a long time. My dad said she thought it was timed, and my mom was just gutted. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept it together. I went to church and sat behind my wife, and they text each other during the meeting and whisper in her ear. I was total mess, and I could see it all happen. They were giddy and all over each other, standing right next to each other when the meeting was over, and just talking openly with her family, etc. Her family, who by this time knew my suspicions, did nothing and noticed by this time her dad had been pulled into line with her mom, I assume. The AP would come over to me and say stuff like, "I am so tired. I've been up all night working." During these 2 weeks, I had been monitoring their WhatsApps, and the two of them had been messaging sometimes until 5 to 10 minutes to each other every night until about 3 a.m. This is circumstantial but clearly significant. She told her family we had been falling apart forever, and anything I said to try and palliate was twisted. She told me one night that she had never loved me and found me boring, but found previous BFs interesting. And I said I earned a lot of money, 6-figure pounds at this point, and had a Jaguar ordered. I could easily find a new wife in England. Her mom later told me I had been bragging about this like it was a threat. She had told me like I had used the affair accusation as an excuse to leave my family. 2 weeks later, I wake up on a Monday morning at my flat 3 hours from my home with a LinkedIn message from the AP's brother-in-law asking for my number, and that guy had been caught cheating with my wife. I gave it to him and he called. 3 a.m., the AP's wife woke up and smelled aftershave. She was on edge and shot up and ran to the Apple phone finder wherever it is. I use Android, and tracked him down to our house. The house was totally dark with no lights on. She went there and phoned her brother, and they found the house and knocked on the door, started shouting and waking up my 5-year-old son, who came downstairs to see what was happening. My wife shot out of the bedroom window right away and said, "What do you want?" Over the next 10 minutes, she slowly came downstairs and tried to placate his wife a little while he tried to sneak out of the back, but they came around and caught him coming out. There was a punch, and straight away, he ran away, got in his car, drove off, as this was working away all week himself. I was destroyed, obviously, and I called my mother-in-law. Then my wife called me and said she had first noticed him a year earlier and had feelings for him, and that she needed someone to talk to back into our first year of marriage. I drove home straight away and organized the meetup with my wife's mom. She said nothing had happened and she could sort it to keep the marriage together, or at least as I understand, it implies this. I said she had been lying so much about the breakup and other stuff that I just couldn't trust her, and it was over. I mentioned the time she had stolen her sister's boyfriend for revenge, and she said that was nothing to do with her. He basically just did it all himself, despite the fact she bragged about it so often. I went and spoke to my wife and told her it was over. She denied anything happened and they were just talking, and denied what she had admitted earlier. This is where it gets dark. I left, I think, when I drove, so I drove back to work. I didn't want to just sit around with her, and I phoned her on the Tuesday, and she told me in tears, "Do you remember the time I assaulted her?" Part of me hoped that we could work out the marriage and reconcile for the children, but when I heard this, my heart sank. The story she had been telling was I had somehow abused her the night before, not at SA, but had called him to come save her. Despite her parents living a mile down the road, and her sister and brother-in-law and her grandparents and lots of other people that I hadn't accused her of having an affair with. That Friday, I drove back home to see kids and phoned her on the way down. She had a big rant and said I couldn't do anything with her or the kids, so I phoned her mom and told her what's happening, and is that my wife had been abused for years by me, and I said how. She had said hidden abuse. This has carried on for about 6 months, with the low light being Christmas dinner with the kids, that she kept mentioning him during it, trying to get me to react. And every time I say something like, "Well, you're the one who had the affair / committed adultery, I am abusing her," and she disengages, and I have to work through her mother to phone the kids, etc., which is a classic control method. They have continued to meet up and have been caught a number of times and verbally refuse to stop seeing each other when not around other people. Even again, at my house with my kids up, the wife and the AP even has a recording of the two of them, chiefly my wife conspiring to lie about where they just were. Now, why does this matter? Well, my church has a policy about adultery, and it would seriously make my wife's family look bad if they got caught. What has the church done? They have assisted the gaslighting attempts by telling me I can't speak to the wife of the AP. The guy who should deal with it is the AP's father-in-law, so he has been countermanded by his boss effectively, who is a good friend of the wife's family. He says there is no evidence anything has happened beyond an inappropriate friendship and refuses to act in any way at all. This then gives her family space to spread lies about me abusing their daughter, who has had her therapist, who I have never met, tell her I am a passive-aggressive narcissist. All the mean times she puts this abused face on while at church and at the house when I visit the kids in her usual abusive self. I am in a better state now. I have a good counselor and even a better solicitor, but she wants it all, and so it looks like I'm going to court. But it's still hard and there's a long road ahead left.